Riven is a point-and-click puzzle/adventure game made by Cyan Worlds, released in 1997. It also has the subtitle, the sequel to Myst, probably to bank on the fact that Myst was extremely popular. I think it earns that subtitle. Pretty much everything has been improved upon from the first game. Puzzle design, environment art, audio and music, the acting and writing, and more. The one thing I will say is that the amount of locations has been reduced to like 1.5 worlds, but the islands of Riven are diverse enough that I didn't care. Rather than breaking up the puzzles into separate worlds like Myst, Riven layers them into a grand overarching plot that you as the player have to assemble on your own. You'll want to have a notepad handy. Even though the game doesn't hide anything behind moon logic, it's critical for the amount of information you'll need to keep track of. Before we get too far into gameplay, I want to show how Riven presents itself first. Like I mentioned earlier, Riven mostly takes place on a cluster of 4 islands, and it would be safe to assume that the environments get repetitive. That's partially true, but for different reasons I'll get into later. While everything might be surrounded by the same blue skies and endless ocean, each island is distinct with its own major landmarks. It's hard to lose track of which island you're on, and that's thanks in part to how detailed and well made everything looks. In the 5 or so years in between Myst and Riven, the dev team made some major strides in their graphical capabilities. Everything feels more grounded and less surreal now. Stylistically, it veers away from the playful world and leans into the main antagonist harnessing the world's resources. Things look more like they were built out of necessity and observation, rather than a creative curiosity. As fantastical as some of the environmental structures are, there's a lot more of a human presence to be found here. That includes some of the actual humans that inhabit Riven. Instead of looking directly into the camera or sitting in one spot, the actors will move around, interact with their surroundings, and generally have more freedom to, well, act. The FMV work holds up fairly well, and I couldn't see any green screen edges on anyone. Though that might just be because of how low res the game is. The game still has the issue where animations are confined to the pixel zone, and this can be extremely obvious in certain sections. Aside from that, I think the animations themselves have drastically improved. Even something simple like a door animation, which used to be a simple wipe effect, looks much more realistic now. Objects, which I'm going to pretend are distinct from the environment, have also been improved. A lot of the objects you can look at hint at how the world works, or what kind of things the characters work on. Mercifully, books are much easier to read now, and I didn't have to strain as much to read most of them, though the difficulty now comes from trying to read some of this handwriting. With everything the game has going for it visually, there's some really incredible moments that it'll show off. It has a certain tranquility in it, with all of the ocean and blue sky everywhere. That's not to say you won't see some outlandish areas, but Riven has a more subdued atmosphere than any of the other Myst games. Something that helps add to the atmosphere is how well done the audio is this time around. I'm not just talking about the music either, I'm talking about the environment, and how much more real these places are now. As much as the word gets tossed around, I want to say that it makes it all feel more immersive. The sound effects, and Foley as I guess it's called, was actually outsourced for this game and was done by Total Audio. They had just come off a marathon of doing jingles for commercials, notably the Flintstone Vitamin Gummies commercials and some other stuff. Game audio was sort of undergoing a revolution at the time with the advent of the CD-ROM, which allowed games to hold much more data and could make room for more traditionally made music. The myth that games couldn't have more legitimate music had eroded, and it was perfect for Total Audio as they had wanted to move into a more creatively enterprising business. You could almost say it was destiny that they would work on video game music. Halo. Anyway, Robin Miller did the music again this time around, and it sounds like a very nice continuation of the ideas he introduced in Myst. Since this game is partially character-driven, it was important that they have some sort of musical coherence, and I think Robin did an excellent job. Characters will have themes, and you can hear some elements come up every now and then when you're exploring. Even though the actual character interactions only happen a couple of times at most, it extends their presence to great effect. This is especially true for the main character of the game, Gen. Everything on the islands is under his influence to some extent, so the game needed to feel like he was present, even if you couldn't directly see him. The music itself, aside from sounding better than ever, also handles the dynamic nature of gameplay much more cleanly now. Getting into gameplay, it is more of the same walking around and solving puzzles that the rest of the franchise has. Like I mentioned earlier though, the puzzles all fit together to make essentially two large puzzles. You're not so much solving puzzles as you are gathering pieces for a larger one. The game then is basically split between two types of gameplay: information gathering and the more traditional put the pieces together puzzles that we've seen before. You'll have to go around and note down things that stick out or seem significant, and later put what you know together to, well, usually it's just open a door, but the doors are locked behind simple yet intricate mechanisms. There are things that aren't immediately clear or stand out as important, so you'll have to go around and look at things a second or third time before the significance stands out. That's kind of why I recommend a notebook, mostly to save yourself some backtracking and to also keep things from getting too messy. Backtracking is probably the only major problem I have with the game. I like the island environments and going between them is fine, but I felt like I was going back and forth way too much by the end. You can just click through and skip animations most of the time, and I might also have a brain parasite that makes me want to go fast, but to me it could have been toned down a little. While we're on nitpicks, I also think the journal reading could have been spaced out. I like the journals, and aside from the one being kinda hard to read, it's a nice experience just chilling out and reading them. However, one of these journals took me almost half an hour to get through, and I'm a fast reader. I don't even think the amount of reading needs to be reduced, but I just wish that it had been spaced out a bit more evenly. Maybe just an extra book or two to help disperse it. Anyway, aside from the puzzle solving, walking around feels less jarring thanks to the improved screen transitions. They can still be a bit jarring when you turn sometimes, but it's far less jerky than Myst ever was. The puzzles themselves also handle a bit better, and thankfully all of them are fairly nice to try and solve. Unlike that stupid train puzzle. Though, the game doesn't let you leave without tricking you at least once. Speaking of tricking, I should probably explain what you're actually doing on these islands, seeing as the end of Myst left us stranded on, well, Myst. This means that I'll be spoiling the story here soon, and probably most of the major mechanics behind the puzzles. If you want to keep the game unspoiled and just hear my dumb conclusion, use the linking book to go to this time. Okay, so as a quick recap, we ended Myst by meeting with Atris, the writer of the ages, or worlds, you explore in that game. He explained that he's fighting a foe, and may need your help with him sometime in the future. Well, the future is now, and the time has come for Atris to send you into the age he's been working on. And as you may have guessed, the age is Riven.
Here. Most of what you'll need to know is in there. Keep it well hidden. For reasons you'll discover, I can't send you to Riven with a way out. But I can give you this. It appears to be a linking book, back here to Dunny. But it's actually a one-man prison. You'll need it, I'm afraid, to capture Gan. Once you've found Catherine, signal me, and I'll come with a linking book to bring us back. There's also a chance, if this all goes well, that I might be able to get you back to the place that you came from.
Immediately after getting to Riven, you're instantly jailed, and your fake book is taken by this guard, which is then immediately snatched by this outlaw-looking guy. At least we still have the journal. Reading it reveals that this age was actually written by Atris' father Gen, and that the age is extremely unstable. Gen also appears to have no regard for life, and has an obsession with the restoration of the Dani civilization, which are the people he originates from. So not only are we probably on a time limit, but there's also a cold, calculating mastermind operating here, virtually unchecked. Anyway, we're here to capture Gan, and to do that, we need to find him and our one-man prison. There's plenty of man-made structures around the islands, not least of all this giant golden dome. Its purpose is unclear, so for now we'll just walk around until we hit an obstacle. It's not long before we run into more people, and they're on high alert. It's pretty obvious Gen has this entire place under his thumb, especially given his presence in the school. He's using the entire age as a resource, stripping the forest for wood and controlling the populace, likely to help him in his building endeavors. After some puzzle solving, we can eventually make it into his study room and read through his journal. It reveals a lot, mainly how he plans on getting off the island. I'm not going to go over everything this journal contains, but suffice to say, there's some juicy stuff in here. Gen has been trying to write ages to leave Riven, but there's something in his process that's flawed. He's been burning the books he deems failures, but eventually he comes up with a solution to power the books past any flaws they might have. He also has a code to access the spinning domes he keeps the books in, encoded with the base 5 number system that the Donnie use. Thankfully, there's a way to get the first 10 numbers at the school. Hope you've been taking notes. Accessing the dome lets... What did I do wrong? Oh, these codes are randomized. Maybe I should have been taking notes. Until we find a way to access the power generator, these domes aren't much use to us for now. The journal also mentions a star fissure, as did Atris's journal. Could be useful later. He also mentions colors here, but we'll save that for later. The other reason we're on Riven is to rescue Atris's wife, Catherine. This journal only mentions her in passing, so I guess it's time to move on. What also remains unclear is what Gen plans to do once he has a way to escape. His ultimate goal is to get back to Donnie to rebuild, but he doesn't really talk about Atris or Catherine. He does plan on relocating the villagers, so that's something, I guess. He mentions a rebellion that was led by Catherine before her capture, so it's a good idea to try and find them. I like how at this point we're not 100% sure that Gen plans on getting rid of Atris, although he's still obviously uninterested in anything other than getting back to Donnie. He also likes to practice his Brazzo healing gaze in the altar room. After poking around some more, there's a path that can be unlocked, which allows us to get to the one-cell prison located in the village. It contains a secret tunnel, which leads to this room. Okay, great. Now what? Well, the answer is pretty simple. There's a collection of spheres scattered across the islands at different points, one of which is located in Gen's study. They're numbered in order, except the numbers are in Donnie numbers, of course. They align with these animal pillars, so all you have to do is select the right animals in the right order. Of course, you also have to know what animal makes what sound, and what they look like, because the spheres only provide audio, and the pillars only have a drawing. This is what I meant earlier by a layered puzzle. The core mechanic of the puzzle is extremely simple. All you have to do is select the correct pillars. But behind that selection is plenty of investigative work, requiring you to pay attention and take notes on things as you see them. It rewards careful observation and a willingness to try and put the pieces together. Of course, if you haven't been taking notes, you'll probably have a lot of work ahead of you. Like I said earlier, if the backtracking wasn't that much to deal with, this would be less of a problem. Anyway, since we've been taking notes, or at least took notes the last playthrough, opening this door doesn't take long. Vault would probably be a better description, as the only thing hidden behind this panel is a linking book. We take it to the cover art world, and not 10 seconds pass before we're knocked out. Behind bars once again. Fortunately, these people are much less controlled by Gen, and it turns out they're the rebels, which means that your book is in safe hands. Catherine's friend delivers you the prison book and Catherine's journal, which takes me, no joke, 25 minutes to read at a brisk pace, and knowing what everything already says. I'm not going to talk about the entire journal, so I'll summarize. Basically, Catherine has been trying to work with the rebels and also get everyone off of the island. Except she's actually managed to get the entire rebel population onto this world. The rest of it basically lays out her time with the rebels, being revered as a goddess, and her discovery of both Gen's work and the impending doom of the islands. She's left a note in her journal, explaining that the key to free her is with Gen, and that Gen might be cautious when you hand him a book to Donnie. She also explains that she knows how to signal Atris, but to not signal him until after everything has been accomplished. With that out of the way, we're given a book to get back to Riven, and are free to continue our mission. It's time to meet with Gen. Going to the Golden Dome takes some navigational patience, but eventually we're able to access the source of power for the books contained within the domes. Getting to this point brings us this. We have to figure out where these 6 marbles go, and there's only 3,000 options or something like that. Of course, if we've been taking notes, this part starts to make sense. Basically, every island has some information on it that gives you the complete picture on how to solve this puzzle. Having all the notes in front of you basically spells out the answer, with just a bit of trial and error needed. I love this puzzle, since the entire game basically builds up to it, and it's impossible to ignore because it's under the giant golden dome that can be seen on every island. Once you power up the books, you can use whichever one floats your boat to get to Gen's New Age. New Age, you know, like Yanni? He's New Age. Never mind. Once we get there, we're in prison for a third time, and from here, we only have one choice.
Which brings me to the point of all of this. The linking book you brought with you. You're very fortunate to have recovered it. If I may. Thank you. Perhaps it would be best if you went through first.
Wait, he fell for that? I thought that prison books trapped you on Channel 3. I guess Atris cooked up a new recipe after Myst. Although he would later go on to rewrite the old prison ages to be entire worlds. And by Atris, I mean the writers of Myst 4. Once we've dealt with Gan, we're able to explore his new residence. After looking around and finding the solution to the lock holding Catherine, which makes a little dink noise, we're able to find Gen's second journal. In it, we find that he despises Catherine, Atris, the people on Riven, and even his own mother. So I think it's fair to write Gen off as a lost cause. Returning to the selection of linking books allows us to get to the final prison island where Catherine is being held. After making quick work of the lock, we meet up with Catherine. She leaves to get the villagers out of Riven, and tells you to open the star fissure back up. The star fissure is actually located right where we started our mission, and using the info from Catherine's journal, we can now break open the seal holding it back. This has consequences for Riven.
This is where our paths must part. Perhaps we'll meet again someday. You know where to find me. Goodbye, my friend.
I love this ending, being dropped into the flow of stars. Atris and the stranger part ways for now, but there's a few more adventures in store for our silent protagonist, one of which even has Brad Dourif in it. There's even a... Wait, Sign Worlds has a dedicated Donnie historian? After years of not playing this game in particular for no reason, I'm glad I finally got a chance to experience it. It feels the most cohesive out of the first 4 games, and everything builds into each other incredibly well. It's a massive improvement from Myst, and although I still probably prefer Exile, Riven is right up there with it. I can't recommend this game enough, even if you watch the spoilers section, which is why I didn't talk that much about the big puzzle. I've heard good things about the remake, which might be better if you're intolerant of old gameplay. But the old game is cheaper and has actual FMV, so think about it. There's still a couple more Myst games to go, including the MMO, which will be interesting.